How do you feel when you wake up? Do you wake up feeling groggy or irritable and you just want to go back to sleep? Don't you want to start waking up and feeling like, wow, I slept great last night? Well, it may seem surprising, but it's definitely possible to start waking up feeling more refreshed. Now, there's a lot of simple things that we can improve on throughout the day, and these simple things can really improve the way that we're going to sleep. So the first thing I want to talk about is nasal breathing. So one of the easiest ways to quickly improve the way that you're sleeping is to only use your nose when you're breathing at night. You might think like, well, how can I possibly do that? I'm asleep. I can't control how I'm breathing. Well, the answer is you have to start forcing yourself to using your nose instead of your mouth. So the way to do that is to tape your mouth shut before you go to sleep. Now you can look on Amazon or something and see a bunch of different ads for mouth tape out there. Really the only thing that you need is something called micropore paper tape. You just need to put a strip of that over your mouth, and this will help enforce this nasal breathing. So what's the difference here? What difference does it make to start breathing through your nose versus your mouth? Well, there is a ton of research out on this, and breathing through your nose versus your mouth has a ton of benefits. And I'm not gonna get into the whole list today because I could make a whole video on that alone, and I actually did make another video on that alone. So I'm gonna put a link to that video in the description below, so make sure you check that out. But one thing in particular that relates to the way that you sleep I wanna talk about is carbon dioxide. So we normally think of carbon dioxide as this waste, that we need to get rid of this from our body. But that's really not the case. Carbon dioxide is actually really important. It's almost just as important as oxygen. And the reason is we can have all the oxygen in the world in our body, but that doesn't mean it's going to get absorbed into our organs. And we need carbon dioxide to make sure that our oxygen actually gets absorbed and goes to the right places. Otherwise, that oxygen is just useless. So mouth breathers will take quicker breaths than nose breathers. Makes sense, right? The mouth hole is way bigger than those two nose holes, so your air is going to come in and come out a lot faster. This makes a big difference in our carbon dioxide levels, because when you're a mouth breather, you're going to be releasing way more carbon dioxide than if you were a nose breather. And our carbon dioxide is really important for controlling our blood's pH. So when our carbon dioxide levels are off, like when we're a mouth breather, that's going to throw off our pH levels. So here's a brief diagram of how oxygen is actually going from your lungs to your organs. So when you breathe in, oxygen will enter your lungs. And then this oxygen molecule will attach to something called hemoglobin. And this hemoglobin is actually what carries the oxygen to all the organs in our body. So for example, let's imagine our brain here. And this hemoglobin is carrying this oxygen to our brain. So it'll travel to our brain, and then the oxygen has to basically drop off the hemoglobin and go to our brain. But the problem is, if our body's pH is not correct, then our oxygen is not able to hop off this hemoglobin and not able to go to our organs. So now instead, if our pH is off, our oxygen actually stays attached to this hemoglobin, and then it becomes useless. And this is what happens when our CO2 levels are off, because they in turn will throw off our pH levels. So this is why mouth breathers can go to sleep for like 8 hours at a time, and they'll still wake up feeling super groggy and super irritable, because their brain and their other organs are not getting enough oxygen. And this is also why mouth breathers are more likely to have hypoxia, or lower levels of oxygen in their blood. So a really simple thing you should start doing is try taping your mouth before you go to sleep. And you can also try using a nasal dilator strip. It's literally a little piece of tape that goes over your nose and helps keep your nose open. Now you might also be wondering, how can I start breathing through my nose if I always have a stuffy nose? Well, I actually made a video exactly on that topic that goes step by step to how to fix a stuffy nose. And it's a really simple exercise. So again, I'm going to put that video in the description below, so make sure you check that out. Now, another way to really improve your sleep and to stop waking up super groggy is to stop eating about 3 hours before it's time to go to bed. So most sleep experts will recommend waiting at least 3 hours after your last meal to go to sleep. And the reason is this gives your body time to digest that meal. And if you don't give your body that time, you're more likely to wake up in the middle of the night and have to go use the bathroom. Now this in turn will affect your sleep cycles and affect your sleep quality. And this will also help control your circadian rhythm. Our circadian rhythm is basically our body's internal clock. And this is also what regulates when it's time for us to wake up and when it's time to go to sleep. And there's research that actually shows when we control our eating window to about 8 hours during the daytime, that this is going to improve our sleep because it's going to help regulate our circadian rhythm. Now, this actually brings me to my next point, which is darkness. So you want to expose yourself to darkness before it's time to go to sleep and while you're sleeping. So that means you really want to avoid using your phone, your iPad, watching TV, all that stuff right before it's time to go to sleep. And that also means that all those devices have to be off and all other light sources have to be off while you're sleeping. And the reason again has to do with our circadian rhythm. So our circadian rhythm is regulated by one specific hormone called melatonin. So melatonin is made in our brain in a region called the pineal gland. And some of it's also made in our retina, in our eyes. And this melatonin is actually released in response to darkness. So when we're exposed to darkness, our body will release this melatonin. And this melatonin is what makes us feel tired and helps us sleep. And at the same time, if our eyes are exposed to light, then this melatonin is going to be suppressed and we're not going to have as much of it, and this is going to make it harder for us to fall asleep. You know, a lot of people take these melatonin pills and this helps them go to sleep. Now, I'm not entirely opposed to that, but I would prefer to have a more natural source of melatonin, because the problem with relying a lot on these pills is over time, your body can naturally start producing less of it because it starts relying on these pills to get melatonin. So then it's even harder for you to naturally produce melatonin. So I would always recommend going with the natural sources of melatonin first, and the biggest one is going to be darkness. Now, another thing you can try doing is turning that temperature down when it's time to go to sleep. So having a colder environment is also going to help release melatonin. And some studies are showing that the best optimal temperature is about 65 degrees Fahrenheit if you're trying to go to sleep. Now, you don't have to follow that number exactly. I think I do about 66 degrees, whatever works best for you, but it's better to keep it a little cool. Now, another reason that turning this thermostat down will help is that your body, when you're sleeping, will naturally have a lower body temperature. And there was actually a study that surveyed about 765,000 people, and they found that most of the time people have sleeping problems when it's a hot month. So like June or July, one of those summer months. And the reason could be because that heat makes it harder for their body to have a cooler temperature. Now, the next thing I want you to try is breathing exercises before you go to bed. So when you think of these exercises, I want you to think of like meditative or yoga breathing. And I only want you to use your nose. All you're gonna do is take really slow breaths in and really slow exhales out. So you want to shoot for about 5 seconds on inhaling and 5 seconds on exhaling. And while you're breathing like this, you want to make sure you use your diaphragm. Now, your diaphragm rests right below your lungs. And when you're engaging your diaphragm when you're breathing, it helps make sure that your entire lungs are getting filled up with air. Now, the way to engage your diaphragm is to basically feel your belly. If your belly's sticking out when you're inhaling, that means you're using your diaphragm and you're filling up your entire lungs with air. If only your chest is moving, then you're not using your diaphragm and only the upper half of your lungs are filling up with air. So you can even do this for just 5 minutes. 5 minutes of this meditative breathing in and out through your nose and taking these deep, slow breaths will really help get you relaxed. And if you want some more science that supports this, this will help stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. So your parasympathetic nervous system is basically when your body goes in rest and relax mode. And when you engage your entire lungs capacity and you take these slower breaths, that's going to stimulate that parasympathetic mode, and it's going to help make you more relaxed and less anxious. Now, something else you can try is to start eating fruits. Now, 2 specific fruits come to mind: tart cherries and kiwis. There's some research that's supporting both of these fruits. If you eat about 2 kiwis or some tart cherries about 1 hour before you go to bed, it's really going to improve your sleep efficiency and your sleep quality. Now, I don't think you have to eat them exactly 1 hour before you go to bed. I think just adding them to your diet in general will help. This study was just talking about eating them 1 hour before. But regardless, the results showed that it improved people's sleep. Now, you also want to make sure that you're exercising. There's plenty of evidence that supports exercising during the day at some point will improve your sleep. Now, obviously, exercising in general is good for you. But when you do some sort of movement that gets your body moving throughout the day, this is going to help you sleep even more because it makes you physically tired already. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is alcohol and caffeine. I know these two drinks are completely different, but both of these beverages, I guess you wouldn't call alcohol a beverage. I don't know if you would or not. But either way, both of these drinks are going to really affect the way that you sleep in different ways. Alcohol, first off, completely destroys your sleep. If you drink alcohol before you go to sleep, one, it may help you actually fall asleep, but that's about it. Your sleep quality is going to be terrible. You're not going to get that deep restorative sleep, and you're going to wake up feeling like crap. And that's probably what's going to cause that hangover of yours. Now, caffeine, on the other hand, is a little different. I'm not too opposed to people drinking coffee as long as they drink it correctly. So I personally never drink coffee or really any caffeine. Occasionally I'll have a green tea here and there, but that's about it. But coffee has a super long half-life. Now that means that it's going to stay in your system for a long time. And if you drink coffee too late in the day, then it's going to stay in your system. And the problem with this is it's going to lower your sleep quality, and then it's going to make you rely on coffee even more the next day because you didn't sleep so good. So studies actually show the best time to drink coffee is about 90 minutes to 2 hours after you wake up. And then you want to avoid drinking coffee at least 8 hours before it's time to go to bed. So that gives you a smaller time frame to drink that coffee, but this is really the best time to make sure you get good sleep and stay alert throughout the day. Now, the last tip I have is to start exposing yourself to light during the day. So just like when it was time to go to bed and we want to expose ourselves to darkness because of that melatonin and our circadian rhythm, it's the same thing during the day, except now you want to expose yourself to sunlight. So to keep it simple, you want darkness at nighttime and you want light during the daytime. Sounds simple enough, right? And there was even a study that went to senior homes or nursing homes, and they exposed them to light during the day. So they either exposed them to sunlight or to this artificial light therapy, and they found that they really improved their sleep quality. And also a lot of their sleep disorders that they had went away. Now again, this has to do with our circadian rhythm. Our circadian rhythm has a big factor in our lives. And doing things to help regulate our circadian rhythm and keep it consistent is really gonna help our sleep. And I promise you guys, if you follow everything I said in this video, you're gonna start waking up feeling a lot more refreshed. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked that video. And if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel below. I will see you in the next video.